The battlefield was a cacophony of explosions, smoke, and bloodied debris. Sergeant Liam Kade crouched behind the smoldering husk of a downed alien war machine, clutching his rifle with white-knuckled intensity. His breathing was labored, the air thick with ash and screams. He had fought in dozens of campaigns against alien invaders, but this battle was chaos beyond anything he'd experienced. The Zarin forces were everywhere, an unyielding tide of biomechanical soldiers led by their enigmatic overlords. These merciless creatures hunted survivors relentlessly. Liam knew his unit was scattered, perhaps dead. He was alone. Yet retreat wasn't in his vocabulary. As he crept through the ruins of an alien city, a sound caught his attention, a faint, melodic hum, so alien yet beautiful that it pierced the din of war. Following the noise, he found her. A figure lay crumpled among jagged, glowing shards of alien architecture, her breathing shallow. She wasn't human. Her elongated body was encased in armor laced with pulsating bioluminescent glyphs. Her skin was an ethereal shade of silver, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to ripple with her heartbeat. Her violet eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly. Liam knew instantly who she was. High Empress Elythra, the ruler of the Athrans, a technologically advanced species that had long declared neutrality in the war. What was she doing here on the front lines, alone and bleeding? Before he could process it, movement in the shadows caught his eye. A gang of alien scavengers, a rogue faction of Zarin outcasts, slithered toward her with crude, serrated weapons, their guttural clicks of excitement clear. They didn't seem to notice Liam. Their prize was the Empress's armor, and they intended to strip it from her corpse. For a fleeting moment, Liam considered leaving her to her fate. What could he, a lone soldier, possibly do? But as the scavengers raised their blades, something deep inside him stirred. A sharp shot rang out. Liam's warning bullet tore through the air, drawing the scavengers' attention. They hissed, scattering briefly. Liam didn't wait. He picked them off with precise shots until none remained. The silence returned, broken only by the crackle of distant fires. Liam knelt beside the alien Empress, who was still conscious, though barely. Her eyes locked onto his, and her lips trembled as she spoke, her voice a harmonic mix of languages. "Why, save me, human." "Guess I'm just a sucker for impossible odds," Liam replied, his tone gruff but laced with dry humor. "Can you walk?" She shook her head weakly. "Flee before they return. You have doomed yourself by aiding me." Her words hung in the air, cryptic and foreboding. But Liam wasn't the type to leave anyone behind, especially someone who didn't deserve to die on foreign soil. Slinging her arm over his shoulder, he muttered, "If I'm doomed, I might as well go down swinging." As they limped toward cover, rumble shook the ground. From the thick smoke emerged a towering Zarin war construct, its massive limbs bristling with cannons and energy lances. Its glowing red eyes locked onto them, and weapons began to charge. Elythra's voice was faint but urgent. "Take this, it is my only chance and yours." In her trembling hand was a shard of glowing crystal. It pulsated like a living thing. Without hesitation, Liam grasped it. A shockwave of energy surged through his body, igniting every nerve like wildfire. His muscles tightened, his senses sharpened, and his vision blurred momentarily before snapping into sharp focus. The war construct unleashed a barrage of energy bolts, but Liam was faster now, inhumanly fast. Dodging, weaving, and returning fire with precision, he fought the mechanical titan. It wasn't just adrenaline. It was as if he had tapped into something far beyond human ability. Hours later, they found temporary refuge in a derelict structure far from the battlefield. Elythra, leaning weakly against a wall, watched Liam warily as he examined the shard glowing faintly in his palm. "You have taken my essence," she said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and reverence. "You're what?" Liam asked, incredulous. She explained, her words slow and deliberate. The shard was a fragment of her life force, a reservoir of ancient power tied to her people's deepest secrets. By taking it, Liam had become bonded to her, their fates entwined. If she died, so would he. And if the Zarins learned the shard's location, they would stop at nothing to retrieve it. What happens now? Liam asked grimly. You must take me to the Atheran Spire, the heart of my people's power, Elythra said. There, the bond can be severed safely or completed. And if I don't? The shard will consume you. Slowly, at first. But in time, you will become something else. Liam's jaw tightened. He wasn't thrilled about being roped into an interstellar conspiracy, but he wasn't about to abandon her now. Let's get moving, he said. We've got a war to outrun. Their journey to the Atheran Spire was fraught with danger. Rogue Zarin patrols hounded them at every turn, and the shard's power began to draw unwanted attention. At night, Liam dreamed of alien starscapes and battles long past, memories that weren't his. When they finally reached the sanctuary, a grand crystalline citadel hidden beneath a dying planet's surface, the Atheran Council awaited them. Their glowing eyes scrutinized Liam with suspicion, and their leader, Elythra, demanded the shard's return. But Elythra surprised even Liam. No, she declared. He carries it now. The bond is his. You defy the ancient laws, Elythra hissed. This human endangers us all. Elythra stood firm. He is our only hope. The Zarins know of the shard. Without him, we are lost. The council erupted in heated debate, but as tensions rose, Liam felt the shard's power surge uncontrollably. Visions of destruction filled his mind, and his body glowed faintly, matching Elythra's markings. You're turning him into one of us, Elythra said, horrified. As the Zarins launched a final assault on the sanctuary, Liam and Elythra stood together, their bond tested in the fires of war. The shard granted Liam immense power, but each use came at a cost, his humanity slipping away bit by bit. In the climactic battle, Elythra revealed the shard's ultimate purpose. It could annihilate the Zarin forces in one devastating pulse, but doing so would kill her and irrevocably transform Liam into an Atheran guardian, a being of pure energy. Faced with an impossible choice, Liam made his decision. Whatever happens, he told Elythra, we finish this together. As he unleashed the shard's full power, the battlefield dissolved into light, and Liam's fate was sealed. The explosion of light consumed the battlefield, silencing the cacophony of war. For a moment, there was nothing but an overwhelming brightness that seemed to stretch into eternity. When the light faded, the Zarin forces were no more, reduced to ash and debris scattered across the barren landscape. Liam Kade collapsed to his knees, clutching his chest. The shard no longer pulsed in his palm. It was gone, absorbed fully into his being. His body felt weightless yet overwhelmingly heavy, as though he was caught between two realities. Liam. Elythra's voice cut through the haze. She knelt beside him, her hands trembling as they hovered over his shoulders. Her normally luminous skin had dimmed, and her violet eyes flickered weakly. Are you still with me? He looked up, his vision sharper than ever before. He could see every pore on her face, every flicker of energy coursing through her markings. But he couldn't feel his heartbeat, only the echo of something else, something alien and vast. I think so, he rasped. His voice sounded distant, as though it wasn't his own. What just happened? Elythra looked away, her expression filled with guilt and sorrow. The shard's power has merged with you completely. You are no longer bound to me, but you are no longer entirely human, either. Liam struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. The ground beneath him felt alive, thrumming with energy that responded to his movements. When he raised his hand, faint streams of glowing energy crackled between his fingers. What am I now? He asked, his voice steady but filled with dread. You are a guardian, Elythra said softly, standing to face him. A conduit of the Atheran legacy, bound to protect what remains of our people. But at great cost. Liam's brow furrowed. What cost? Before Elythra could answer, rumble shook the ground. The crystalline spires of the sanctuary shimmered and fractured, as though they were reacting to Liam's transformation. Elythra's eyes widened in alarm. The council, she whispered. They'll see you as a threat. Within the sanctuary's great hall, the Atheran Council reconvened, their glowing forms dimmed by exhaustion from the recent battle. Elythra, The eldest of the council, paced before the assembled Athrans, his expression a mixture of fury and fear. "You have doomed us all, Elythra," he spat, pointing an accusatory finger at her. "The human was never meant to wield the shard's power. He is a harbinger of chaos." Liam stood beside Elythra, his rifle still slung over his back, though he doubted he'd ever need it again. The energy coursing through his veins made the weapon feel like a relic. "I didn't ask for this," he said, his voice echoing faintly, as though laced with alien resonance. Irinder turned to him, his eyes blazing. "No, but you accepted it. And now you carry the weight of the Athran legacy. That power does not belong to you." Elythra stepped forward, defiance in her tone. "He saved my life and the lives of countless others. Without him, the Zarans would have destroyed us. Do not punish him for circumstances beyond his control." The council murmured among themselves, their voices like a low hum vibrating through the chamber. Finally, Irinder raised his hand for silence. "The Zarans may be gone, but their masters, the Lirath Imperium, will not ignore the activation of the shard," he said gravely. "They will come, and when they do, they will not stop until they claim it for themselves." Liam frowned. "Who the hell are the Lirath Imperium?" Irinder turned to him, his gaze heavy with centuries of knowledge. "They are the architects of this war, the force behind the Zaran armies. The shard's power was created to fight them millennia ago, but it is a weapon they covet. Your transformation will draw them like moths to flame." "Then we'll fight them," Liam said firmly. The council erupted into discord, voices clashing. Irinder's voice rose above the din. "You don't understand. You cannot fight the Lirath. They are not conquerors. They are obliterators. They will not stop until they have unmade everything." Elythra placed a hand on Liam's arm, her touch calming the growing tension in him. "There is another way," she said quietly. "We can use the shard to protect us, to rally allies who would stand against the Lirath." Irinder scoffed. "You would trust a guardian with that responsibility? He is untested, and he is human." "He is more than that now," Elythra replied sharply, "and I will stand by him." Liam glanced between them, the weight of the situation settling over him. "What's the plan, then?" Irinder's gaze darkened. "You must leave. The sanctuary is no longer safe, and your presence here puts us all at risk. Go into the stars and find allies who would stand against the Lirath. Prove that you are worthy of the power you carry." "And if I don't?" Liam asked. "Then you will doom not only yourself, but all who shelter you," Irinder said coldly. 2 days later, Liam and Elythra stood on the bridge of an Athran starship, its sleek, crystalline design glowing faintly as it prepared for launch. The ship, the luminal blade, hummed with energy, its systems bonded to Elythra's presence. "This is your last chance to back out," Liam said, adjusting the harness of his gear. Elythra raised an elegant brow. "Do you think me so fragile?" "No," Liam admitted. "But this is going to get messy." She smiled faintly. "Then it is fortunate you'll have a queen by your side." As the ship lifted off, the sanctuary receded into the distance, its spires glittering against the void. Liam's chest tightened as he felt the shard's power pulse within him. He had no idea what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. The war wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The stars stretched before them, vast and endless, promising danger and opportunity in equal measure. The luminal blade cut through the cold void of space like a spectral arrow, its crystalline hull shimmering faintly with energy. Liam sat in the co-pilot's chair, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The shard's pulse in his chest was a constant reminder of his new reality, a reality he wasn't sure he could ever return from. Beside him, Elythra adjusted the ship's navigational controls, her violet eyes glowing faintly as they scanned the data streams projected before her. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but laden with unspoken questions. "So, where are we going, exactly?" Liam finally asked. "To the Zethari Nexus," Elythra replied. "It's an interstellar trading hub, neutral ground, at least officially. If we're to gather allies, it's the best place to start." Liam raised an eyebrow. "And who exactly are we recruiting? Because last I checked, neutral ground isn't exactly a hotbed for rebellion." Elythra allowed a small smile. You underestimate the desperation of those who live in the cracks of empires. The Nexus is home to outcasts, smugglers, and exiled leaders. Many would rather fight than fade into obscurity. Smugglers and outcasts, Liam muttered. Sounds promising. Elythra's gaze flicked to him, her expression unreadable. They may surprise you. After all, you've already surprised me. Before Liam could respond, a shrill alarm sounded through the cockpit. The ship's systems flared, and the glowing navigation grid abruptly shifted to display a massive vessel emerging from subspace ahead of them. The ship was angular and ominous, its dark hull bristling with weapons and adorned with crimson glyphs. Liam's instincts kicked in immediately. Let me guess, friends of yours? Elythra's expression darkened. Lirath raiders. They must have detected the shard's resonance. Great. What are our options? Elythra's fingers danced over the controls. The luminal blade is fast, but their weapons will outrange ours. If we can make it to the debris field ahead, we might lose them in the interference. Might isn't exactly the word I was hoping for, Liam muttered, strapping himself into his seat. Let's do it. The Lirath raider opened fire as the luminal blade surged forward. Brilliant beams of energy streaked through the void, narrowly missing the Atheran ship. Liam gritted his teeth as the vessel rocked from the shockwaves. Can't this thing shoot back? Liam shouted. The blade wasn't designed for combat, Elythra replied, her voice tense. It's a research vessel. Of course it is, Liam muttered, gripping the armrests as the ship weaved through the onslaught. The debris field loomed ahead, a sprawling maze of shattered ships and asteroid fragments suspended in the void. Elythra piloted the luminal blade into the chaos, the ship's crystalline hull glowing brighter as its shields absorbed glancing blows from the Lirath's weapons. They're following us in, Elythra said, her voice taut. Then let's give them a reason to regret it, Liam replied, unstrapping himself and heading for the weapons console. Though the blade wasn't a warship, it had a basic defense system designed for repelling space debris. Liam activated the turret controls, targeting a cluster of asteroid fragments. A burst of energy from the ship's weapons sent the debris hurtling toward the pursuing Lirath vessel. The larger ship was forced to maneuver, slowing its pursuit. Nice shot, Elythra called. Beginner's luck, Liam replied, already lining up another shot. The luminal blade finally broke free of the debris field. The Lirath raiders left scrambling in the chaos. Elythra plotted a jump to the Nexus, and moments later, the ship slipped into the shimmering folds of subspace. When they emerged, the Zethri Nexus came into view. It was a sprawling construct of interconnected spires and floating platforms, glowing faintly against the backdrop of a distant nebula. Ships of every design and origin drifted around it, their trajectories chaotic but purposeful. Welcome to the Nexus, Elythra said, her tone carrying a mix of reverence and wariness. As they approached the docking bays, Liam couldn't help but marvel at the sheer variety of life forms and ships gathered here. It was a melting pot of species, cultures, and technologies, all coexisting under the unspoken rules of neutrality. They docked without incident, stepping into the bustling chaos of the station. Liam kept his hand near his sidearm, his senses heightened by the shard's presence. He could feel the pulse of countless lives around him, their energies like flickering flames in the dark. Where do we start? Liam asked, scanning the crowd. Elythra gestured toward a towering structure at the center of the Nexus. The Arkspire Cantina. It's where deals are made and alliances are forged. But be cautious, trust is a rare commodity here. As they entered the cantina, the air was thick with tension and the acrid scent of alien spices. Mercenaries, smugglers, and traders filled the room, their conversations a cacophony of languages. Liam's gaze swept over the crowd, searching for anyone who didn't look like they wanted to stab him for his boots. A figure at the bar caught Elythra's attention. A broad-shouldered alien with sapphire scales and glowing green eyes turned toward them, his expression shifting to surprise. He wore a patchwork coat adorned with stolen insignias. Velos Trigan, Elythra said quietly, a pirate king turned fugitive. If anyone knows how to fight the Lirath, it's him. Pirate king? Liam echoed. Sounds like a fun guy. As they approached, Velos raised a brow ridge. Elythra of the Atherans, he said, his voice deep and gravelly. It's not every day a queen walks into my bar. Who's your friend? Liam smirked. Just a guy trying to stay alive. Velos chuckled darkly. Aren't we all? So, what brings you to the Nexus? Looking for a rebellion to fund? Or just hiding from the Lirath? Elythra's expression hardened. Both. Velos leaned back, crossing his scaled arms. Interesting. Tell me more. As Liam and Elythra negotiated with Velos, the Lirath Imperium's shadow loomed closer. Unbeknownst to them, a Lirath informant had tracked their ship to the Nexus. Deep within the station, a cloaked figure relayed a transmission. Subject confirmed. The shard is here. The figure hissed, its voice echoing in mechanical tones. Send the hunter. In the depths of space, a massive Lirath warship received the transmission. A dark figure stood on the bridge, clad in ornate armor etched with crimson glyphs. Its glowing red eyes narrowed as it listened. Prepare the fleet, it commanded. The shard will be ours. Back at the Arkspire Cantina, Liam felt a sudden chill, the shard in his chest pulsing faintly. Elythra noticed his unease. What is it? She asked. Something's coming, Liam said, his voice low. And it's not friendly. The energy in the Arkspire Cantina shifted palpably, the boisterous chatter dimming as a ripple of unease swept through the crowd. Liam Kade's instincts flared, the shard in his chest pulsing with an almost predatory awareness. He scanned the room, one hand resting on his sidearm, the other brushing against the cold metal of the shard embedded beneath his jacket. Elythra stiffened beside him, her violet eyes narrowing. Do you feel that? Yeah, Liam muttered. Feels like we're about to have company. Before either of them could react, the cantina's entrance hissed open, and a figure stepped inside. Clad in black armor etched with blood-red glyphs, the being seemed to absorb the dim light around it. Its helmet was smooth and featureless save for two glowing crimson slits where eyes should have been. On its back was a massive, serrated glaive, and in its hand, a glowing tether crackled with volatile energy. Gasps rippled through the room. Conversations died. Even the drunkest patrons froze as the figure's presence pressed on them like a physical weight. The Shade Hunter, Elythra whispered, her voice tinged with dread. Liam's jaw tightened. Friend of yours? No. One of the Liratha's deadliest assassins, Elythra said, her voice trembling slightly. They are relentless, and they never fail. Great, Liam muttered, already calculating the quickest path to the exit. The Shade Hunter strode into the cantina, its movements fluid and deliberate. It scanned the room briefly before stopping, its glowing eyes locking onto Liam and Elythra. It tilted its head slightly, as if savoring the moment. Shard-bearer, the Shade Hunter said, its voice an eerie blend of metallic resonance and a deep growl. You carry what belongs to the Imperium. Surrender it, and I will grant you a swift death. Liam took a slow step forward, deliberately placing himself between the assassin and Elythra. Yeah, not really my style, he said, drawing his weapon. The Shade Hunter let out a low, guttural chuckle. So be it. Before the Shade Hunter could strike, Liam fired, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to aim for the exposed joints in the assassin's armor. The first few shots struck true, but the assassin barely flinched, its energy shield absorbing most of the impact. Get to cover, Liam shouted, firing again as the patrons erupted into chaos. Elythra ducked behind a table, her hand glowing faintly as she began channeling energy to defend herself. The Shade Hunter, unfazed by the scattering crowd, moved with lightning speed, drawing its serrated glaive. In one swift motion, it slammed the weapon into the ground, sending a shockwave of crackling energy through the cantina. Liam dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. Tables and chairs were thrown into the air, and the cantina's walls groaned under the force. This guy doesn't mess around, he muttered, rolling into a crouch. Elythra emerged from cover, her hands glowing as she hurled a sphere of pure energy at the Shade Hunter. The blast struck its shield, momentarily staggering it. We can't fight it head-on, she called to Liam. Any bright ideas? Liam shouted, ducking as the glaive sliced through the air where his head had been moments before. "The station's security grid," Elythra said, pointing toward a console near the bar. "If we can activate it, the automated turrets might slow it down." "On it," Liam said, sprinting toward the console. The Shade Hunter turned its attention to him, raising its tethered weapon. A glowing whip of energy lashed out, narrowly missing Liam as he slid behind the bar. He didn't stop to think, slamming his hand onto the console and activating the grid. Above them, automated turrets descended from the ceiling, their barrels glowing with charged plasma. The Shade Hunter turned just as the turrets opened fire, forcing it to retreat temporarily. "We've got an opening," Liam shouted, grabbing Elythra's arm. "Let's go." They burst out of the cantina into the labyrinthine corridors of the Zethary Nexus. The station's neon lights and holographic signs flickered erratically, the damage from the fight disrupting its systems. Behind them, the sound of the Shade Hunter's glaive scraping against the walls echoed ominously. Elythra glanced back, her expression grim. "It won't stop, Liam. Not until it has the shard, or you." "Yeah, I figured that out," Liam said, his breath ragged. "Do you have a plan, or are we just winging it?" Elythra's eyes glowed faintly as she scanned the corridor ahead. "There's a docking bay nearby. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose it in the station's exterior debris fields." "Might again," Liam said, shaking his head. "You really know how to sell a plan." As they rounded a corner, the Shade Hunter appeared ahead of them, its glaive glowing ominously. Liam skidded to a halt, raising his weapon. "How the hell did it?" "It can teleport through short distances," Elythra shouted, pulling him into a side passage as the glaive slammed into the ground where they had been standing. The passage led to a maintenance corridor, its walls lined with pipes and exposed wiring. Elythra paused, placing her glowing hands against a control panel. The air shimmered as she activated a security lock behind them, sealing the door. "That'll slow it down," she said, panting. "For how long?" Liam asked, gripping his rifle tightly. "Not long enough," she admitted. The docking bay came into view, its vast chamber filled with a mix of freighters, shuttles, and scavenged ships. Elythra pointed to a sleek, heavily modified craft near the far end. "That one. It's fast enough to outrun a Lirath cruiser." "Fast is good," Liam said, already sprinting toward it. As they reached the ship, the Shade Hunter's voice echoed through the docking bay. "You cannot run forever, Shardbearer." Liam turned to see the assassin emerge from the shadows, its crimson eyes glowing brighter. Behind it, a squad of Lirath soldiers appeared, their weapons trained on him and Elythra. "Reinforcements," Liam muttered. "Perfect." Elythra's gaze hardened. "We can't win this fight, Liam. We have to get to the ship." Liam nodded, his grip tightening on his rifle. "I'll cover you. Get it started." Before she could protest, Liam opened fire, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to take down two of the soldiers in rapid succession. The Shade Hunter deflected his shots with its glaive, advancing steadily. Elythra darted toward the ship, her hands glowing as she activated its systems. The craft's engines roared to life, bathing the docking bay in a brilliant light. "Liam," she shouted, "get in." But the Shade Hunter was already closing in, its glaive raised for the killing blow. Liam's instincts flared, and the shard's energy surged through him. His body glowed faintly as he met the assassin's strike head-on, his rifle blocking the glaive's blade in a shower of sparks. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as their weapons locked, the shard's power resonating against the Shade Hunter's dark energy. "Impressive," the assassin growled, "but futile." Liam gritted his teeth, his muscles straining against the glaive's force. "You talk too much." Summoning every ounce of strength, he pushed the glaive aside and fired point-blank into the Shade Hunter's chest, sending it stumbling back. Without waiting, he sprinted toward the ship, leaping into the open hatch as Elythra slammed the controls to seal it. The craft shot out of the docking bay, leaving the assassin and its soldiers behind. As the ship hurtled into the void, Elythra slumped into the pilot's seat, her breathing ragged. Liam leaned against the bulkhead, his heart pounding. "That was close," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. Too close, Elythra replied. But the shard in Liam's chest pulsed faintly, as if warning them that the danger was far from over. Where to now? Liam asked. Elythra's gaze was distant, her voice quiet. To find allies, before the Imperium finds us again. The sleek, modified freighter drifted through the void, its engines humming softly. Liam Kade stood in the cockpit, staring out at the vast expanse of stars. Despite the stillness outside, tension crackled in the air. The shard embedded in his chest pulsed faintly, its rhythm almost comforting. If it didn't remind him of how deeply tied he was to the alien power he barely understood. Elythra's voice broke the silence. We're nearing the auric belt. Beyond it lies a planet that may offer us what we need. Liam turned to her, one eyebrow raised. And what exactly do we need? People, she replied, her tone firm. Rebels. Fighters. There is a resistance brewing against the Lirath Imperium, though it's fractured and disorganized. But if we can unite them, they may stand a chance. Liam leaned against the console, arms crossed. And this planet, what's the catch? Elythra hesitated. It's called Vandros, and it's complicated. The Imperium uses it as a mining colony, but the people there are fiercely independent. If we're lucky, we'll find a leader among them willing to listen. If not, they'll shoot us on sight, Liam finished for her. Sounds like a party. Elythra allowed a faint smile. You have a knack for understatement. The shard pulsed again, and Liam winced slightly, rubbing his chest. Elythra's expression shifted to concern. Is it worsening? It's fine, Liam said quickly. Just doing its thing. Her gaze lingered on him, but she didn't press the issue. Instead, she turned her attention to the navigation console, her fingers gliding over the glowing controls. The planet Vandros loomed ahead, its surface a swirling mix of amber deserts and jagged black mountain ranges. Massive industrial facilities dotted the landscape, their lights piercing the planet's perpetual dusk. Mining ships buzzed like insects around towering refineries, siphoning the planet's resources for the Lirath Imperium. As they approached, Elythra activated the freighter stealth systems. We'll need to land far from the mining zones. If the Imperium detects us, we won't last long. Liam nodded, double-checking his gear. His rifle was loaded, and his sidearm rested securely at his hip. The shard hummed faintly, its energy coursing through him. You sure about this place? Liam asked as they descended toward a desolate stretch of rocky terrain. No, Elythra admitted, but it's our best option. The people of Vandros have no love for the Lirath. They just need a reason to fight. The freighter landed with a soft hiss, its landing struts sinking slightly into the sand. Liam and Elythra disembarked, the hot wind whipping around them. The air was thick with metallic tang, and the horizon was dominated by the silhouettes of distant refineries. Where do we start? Liam asked, scanning the barren landscape. Elythra gestured toward a cluster of jagged rocks. There's a settlement nearby. Small, hidden from the Imperium's patrols. If anyone knows where to find resistance fighters, it'll be there. The settlement was a haphazard collection of prefabricated structures, half buried in the sand to avoid detection. As Liam and Elythra approached, figures emerged from the shadows. Scrappy, heavily armed individuals who looked like they'd spent most of their lives in a fight. A grizzled man stepped forward, his face weathered by years of hardship. He leveled a rifle at them, his piercing gray eyes darting between the two strangers. You've got about 10 seconds to explain why you're here before we make you regret it. We're not your enemies, Elythra said calmly, raising her hands. Her markings glowed faintly, catching the man's attention. We came to help. Help? The man scoffed, but his eyes lingered on her glowing skin. You're Athrin. You've got no business here. And yet here we are, Liam cut in, stepping forward. We've got something the Imperium wants, and we're looking for people who are ready to hit back. The man narrowed his eyes. And what makes you think we'd trust you? Liam glanced at Elythra, then sighed. Because the Imperium sent one of their top killers after us, and we're still standing. For a moment, the man said nothing, then motioned for them to follow. If you're lying, you won't leave this place alive. No pressure, Liam muttered under his breath. Inside the settlement's largest structure, the man introduced himself as Roland, a former officer of the Imperium who had defected after seeing the destruction they wrought on Vandros. "There's no resistance here," Roland said bluntly. "Just survivors trying to stay out of the Imperium's way." "Surviving isn't going to cut it anymore," Liam said. "The Imperium's coming for us. For all of us. The only way we win is by standing together." Roland leaned back in his chair, studying Liam. "And why should we believe you can do anything about it? What makes you so special?" Liam hesitated, then pulled open his jacket, revealing the faint glow of the shard embedded in his chest. The room fell silent as the settlers stared, a mixture of awe and fear in their eyes. "You're bonded to Atheran power," Roland said, his voice low. "That's impossible." "Tell that to the assassin that tried to kill me," Liam replied. "And the Lirath fleet that's probably on its way here as we speak." Elythra stepped forward, her tone firm. "The Imperium fears the shard. It's a weapon they've tried to control for centuries. But in the right hands, it can be a beacon for something greater, a chance to end their reign." Roland was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If you're serious about this, there's someone you need to meet. She's been organizing resistance cells across the sector." "Where is she?" Elythra asked. Roland's expression darkened. "In a Lirath prison. If you want her help, you'll have to break her out." Liam sighed. "Of course we will." The Lirath prison loomed on the horizon, an imposing fortress of jagged black metal embedded in the rocky cliffs of Vandros. Energy barriers shimmered around its perimeter, and automated turrets scanned the wasteland for intruders. Liam and Elythra crouched behind a ridge, surveying the stronghold. "This place doesn't mess around," Liam muttered, adjusting the strap of his rifle. "It's not meant to," Elythra replied. "The Imperium uses it to hold those they consider dangerous. Breaking someone out won't just draw attention. It'll paint a target on the entire resistance." Liam smirked. "Sounds like we're in the right place, then." Roland had provided them with a detailed layout of the prison, along with a single name. Kyra Voss, the leader of the resistance movement they desperately needed to unite the fractured rebels. But reaching her would be anything but simple. "Once we're inside, we won't have long before the alarms bring reinforcements," Elythra said. "The shard's energy might give you an edge, but even you can't take on an entire garrison." Liam tightened his grip on his weapon. "Then we better make it count." The infiltration was a mix of precision and chaos. Using a stolen Lirath patrol vehicle, they bypassed the outer defenses, slipping through the energy barriers under the cover of night. Inside, the halls were a labyrinth of dark metal, illuminated only by the eerie red glow of Lirath glyphs. As they moved deeper into the prison, the shard in Liam's chest began to pulse more strongly, as if sensing the despair and suffering that permeated the air. He could feel the faint echoes of the prisoner's thoughts, flashes of fear, anger, and defiance. "Kyra's cell is on the lower level," Elythra whispered as they reached a massive central chamber guarded by Lirath soldiers. Liam nodded, his body tense as the shard's energy surged through him. He stepped into the open, drawing the guards' attention. "Hey, fellas," he shouted. "Looking for me?" The soldiers raised their weapons, but Liam moved faster than they could react. The shard flared, and a pulse of energy erupted from him, disarming them in a blinding flash. Elythra followed close behind, using her own abilities to disable the security systems as they pressed forward. They found Kyra in a reinforced cell, her wrists bound in glowing shackles. Despite her captivity, her presence was commanding. Her sharp green eyes burned with determination, and her voice was calm, even as the alarms began to blare. "Let me guess," Kyra said, a wry smile on her lips. "You're here to save me." "Something like that," Liam replied, blasting the lock off her cell. Kyra stepped out, her movements steady despite the restraints. "Hope you've got a plan for what happens next." Liam smirked. "Not dying is the first step." With Kyra freed, the trio fought their way back through the prison, narrowly avoiding capture at every turn. By the time they reached the stolen patrol vehicle, the fortress was in chaos, Lirath forces scrambling to contain the breach. Back at the resistance hideout, Kyra wasted no time rallying her people. Her reputation alone was enough to draw others from across the sector, and soon, the settlement buzzed with activity as former outlaws, defected soldiers, and hardened survivors prepared for war. "You've stirred up quite the hornet's nest," Kyra said to Liam as they stood on a balcony overlooking the gathering forces. "That's kind of my thing," Liam replied, the shard in his chest glowing faintly. Kyra studied him for a moment. "Whatever that thing is, it's more than just a weapon. It's a symbol. People need something to believe in, something bigger than themselves." Liam glanced at Elythra, who stood nearby, her expression thoughtful. "What happens if this doesn't work?" he asked. Kyra's gaze hardened. "Then we make it work." The battle for Vandros was a clash of fire and fury. The Resistance launched a coordinated assault on the Imperium's main refinery, striking at the heart of their operations on the planet. Liam led the charge, his shard-enhanced abilities turning him into a one-man storm on the battlefield. Elythra fought beside him, her energy weaving through the chaos as she shielded allies and dismantled Lirath war machines. Kyra directed the assault with precision, her presence galvanizing the Resistance fighters even as the battle pushed them to their limits. But the Imperium's forces were relentless. As the Resistance breached the refinery's core, a massive Lirath warship descended, unleashing waves of reinforcements. At the center of it all was the Shade Hunter, its glaive glowing ominously as it stepped onto the battlefield. "This ends now, Shard-bearer," the assassin growled, its crimson eyes locked on Liam. Liam and the Shade Hunter clashed in a brutal, high-stakes duel, their strikes shaking the battlefield. The shard flared with every blow, its energy coursing through Liam's veins. He could feel its power pushing him to the brink, whispering promises of victory, but at a cost. "Don't let it consume you," Elythra shouted, her voice cutting through the haze. Liam gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay grounded. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for Elythra, for Kyra, and for every person who refused to bow to the Imperium. With one final surge of energy, Liam unleashed the shard's power, engulfing the Shade Hunter in a blinding light. When the glow faded, the assassin was gone, its armor reduced to molten slag. But Liam collapsed to his knees, his body trembling. The shard's energy flickered dangerously, threatening to overwhelm him. Elythra knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've done enough," she said softly. "Let us carry the rest." The battle ended in victory, the Imperium's forces driven from Vandros. The Resistance, now united, began to spread its message across the sector, drawing allies from every corner of the galaxy. Liam stood on a hill overlooking the liberated settlement, the shard in his chest glowing faintly. Elythra joined him, her expression a mixture of pride and sadness. "You've become something more than human," she said. "And yet, you've held on to your humanity." Liam smirked. "Barely." She placed a hand over his chest, directly above the shard. "This bond will always tie us together, Liam. But it's your choices that define what it means." He nodded, staring out at the horizon. "The Imperium's not done. This is just the beginning." "Then we'll face it together," Elythra said, her voice steady. As the sun rose over Vandros, Liam felt a rare flicker of hope. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he was ready to meet it head-on.